What's going on, everybody? It's Wicked Wolf here with another tutorial video about the world builder for Command and Conquer Zero Hour. This is part 2 of the last world builder tutorial, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the object list tool, go down to structure under the civilian, and I'm going to look for civilian bunker. It should be alphabetical. This is one of the garrisonable bunkers that the computer and you can use as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just place this down. I'm going to create a small portion of the map, trying to be diagonal from each other, symmetrically still sound, for capturable tech buildings. So your tech buildings will also be in the same section. You just scroll down to tech, and then you will find all the different types of capturable tech buildings that you can put into the map. So I'm just going to add a few here: the refinery, the artillery platform, and an oil derrick. Now I'm thinking about adding a train here. I did bring a tunnel out in case I wanted to use that, but in this video I actually don't end up using the tunnel. But for the roads, I'm going to go click on the road tool, and I'm going to go down till I see train tracks. You can pick out whatever kind of train track that you want, as long as you make sure that they are curved and they're not too choppy and sharp, because a train will, honestly, it'll just look terrible if you do that. So I went ahead and straightened everything up. Now I'm going to go ahead and just design the look. This Z tool here on the object tool menu can either raise or lower an object. So Z just represents height on the map. Just like you'd have your x-axis, your y-axis, now you have your z-axis. So I went ahead and got a little bit of a basic look. I did the exact same style on the opposite side of the map. I'm going to go over to the fence tool, and we're going to go down and find a chain linked fence. You can use any of these kind. Definitely recommend experimenting with them, but understand that if you place it down, there'll be a difference from right to left. As you can see here, it flipped out, and left to right. So just pay attention when you're putting that down. And I always recommend that if you are using the fence tool, just go ahead and drag it out further than you actually need, so then you can manipulate and delete extra fences and stuff, because it's harder when you don't have enough to try to fill them in. So I went ahead and just put together a quick fence. Now I'm just going to be looking for some sandbags, kind of as a barrier for aesthetics, and also to keep infantry out so that they have to go around this. I'm going to use the artillery platform to line up the distance. As you can see here, if your camera, if you're zoomed in too far, you won't actually be able to pull past a certain point on your screen. So if you're having that issue, just zoom out. So now I'm using them together to uniformly change them, and also to kind of measure the distance between the civilian bunkers. So that looks pretty good to me. It may not be absolute, but it's good enough for me now. So I'm going to look for some more aesthetic pleasing things. I'm going to change this. I don't really care for this look here. I don't want the whole thing to look like just gravel. So I'm just going to place it along this train track here, kind of show that barrier change. And now I'm going to look for a different, more like an asphalt look, because I want this to seem more industrial in nature. So that looks a little bit better to me. I have plans to go ahead and add some more roads and some of the effects that you can use that, and I'll show you what that is in a moment. But here I am just going to go through with the brush, changing that up and blending it out, so you can kind of get an example of what it should look like. Now if you're having issues with the alpha blend, you can do the single blend, and you just drag from diagonal or out in any direction to kind of manipulate those tiles. Alright, so now I've gone ahead and moved the tree. I've kind of got a base template of what I'm looking for. I got my road tool out, and this is an example of how you can use the road tool to create parking. And there's different things you can do. You can use tiles, and it's a pre-generated grid. So I wanted a custom parking line, so I went ahead and used the road tool, because you can manipulate it however you want, set it up however you want. So this is another example of the left to right versus right to left placement. It can be upside down, or it can be right side up. So right here I'm just kind of squeezing these in, moving this a little bit, and give a little bit of an illusion that cars could actually park here. It's a little bit of a tight area. I would recommend maybe making this slightly bigger, just so that it actually looks like a car could drive in there and out of there. but just an example. Here's a diagonal version of the parking lines that you can use. There are a ton of different roads that are unique that you can try out that aren't necessarily roads. They're actually just more like your pathway tool is what it should actually be, because you can create parking lines, you can create caution strips, you can create words, all kinds of different things. I'll show you that in a second. Now be careful, like here, these yellow dots can be manipulated, but if they get too close, they will combine just like roads will. That can mess up sort of the look. But here's just a few showcasing things that you can do, some arrows, different things that you can say caution. I'm going to actually use this one, and you can see that by moving and manipulating that yellow, those two yellow dots, you can rearrange and expand those words. So just another example there for yield. Play around with these and see what you like. You can definitely get your own version take on what you're doing. I just wanted to go for a really simple, kind of more just like off. Here we go. So I got this cross right here, and I'm going to change this so that it looks like it's actually being oiled. The oil is drilling in it. So we want it to drill into that cross. And here's a caution strip that I'm going to put around the oil refinery, trying to give it a look like it's just a caution strip basically. Now when you're doing stuff with this, watch those curve types, because on the actual quick menu you can see there are 3 different types of curves that you can have. I usually just keep it on the normal curve, the default curve, but if you wanted it to be angled, if you wanted it to be tight, you can do that. And just play around with those. So here I'm just kind of cleaning this up. But what I was saying was I wanted this more like a very simple, small, little capturable zone that the computer or a person can take over and defend. I didn't want a large space, and I wanted it to just aesthetically be kind of what you would expect, a tiny offshore oil area. Okay, so that's pretty much the look that I'm going for. You can see I went ahead and did it on the other side here. So those are the two. I try to make them somewhat similar in distance and such, but because the map is a little different and it's not fully symmetrical, neither will they. If you want to do that, go ahead and do that, but that's going to be a lot of technical skill to do those things. You're going to use those waypoints and everything else to kind of help create a better grid to follow. So now I'm going to show what a water tool is capable of. Right here I'm just going to make a quick lowering the map, and with the water tool you just come out just like you would an area tool and place them. For whatever reason it kept flipping on me, so I'm just going to go ahead and take the selector tool, move it over, and of course, like everything else, you can rearrange it. Just make sure you're selecting the individual point and not the full water tool itself, where you'll be moving it instead of moving that point. Now I'm just playing around with the water height. You can set it to whatever. I want it to look like it's a river next to a road, so definitely going to go back and smooth out this. As you can see, you can definitely tell a difference there. Make sure when you're doing this that you make that water tool go beyond the map border. And if you have to, turn to your side and line it up with that map border to make sure that the water tool is beyond the map border, so that you don't see the ends of those river unless you want it to be seen. Then you can add aesthetic things like rocks or drains or anything like that to make it look like it's supposed to be ending or starting somewhere. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not doing that. I want it to go off the map, so just make sure that you do that as well. See here, I accidentally grabbed one of the parameters instead of that. If you're having this kind of issue, you can select and drag. So you would just hold the mouse and create a little box around the object, and that usually selects it for you so that you can manipulate and move it if you needed to. So I have one side. I don't think it would be fair to only have it on one side, so I'm going to go ahead and do it to the other side, and then, if you're wondering, I'm going to be adding bridges too, and then I'm going to reimagine the waypoint paths for the AI. So here I am just going through, and I'm going to try to find a good bridge. So we're going to go down to bridges under the road tool, and I'm just looking for something that looks like it would be good. Just hit ignore through these. Alright, so this looks good to me. It has the rails, and it doesn't necessarily look as much like it's a road dependent bridge, because I don't want it to really be focused on cars as much as like you would imagine people and whatever else would be walking through this. So move the trees out of the way. I just dragged it a little bit further off so that we don't have that weird separation because the bridge was too small. So now I'm just going to be picking my points. I'm using these waypoints already to kind of line up bridges, make it easy. There we go. And we're just doing the same thing down here. And what I'm planning on doing is staggering these bridges so that there really isn't a fair advantage. There's no unfair advantage for the computer or for a human, because even though it's somewhat symmetrical on this map, I'm going to make it staggered so that all the computers and everything, the main fight, if people are really pushing hard, is going to take place on that road and in these bridges. Unless, of course, they have airplanes, then you're going to be able to really utilize your airplanes to kind of quick pace through these. But like I said, you're probably going to have some anti-air on those bridges. So I went ahead and did the other side. This is what I was talking about, staggered bridges. And now all I have to do is just put the waypoint tools for the pathways and just expand on those. So that's pretty much it. You can see me here manipulating those. And I'm just going to show kind of what it's like. I accidentally selected that. Just Control Z to get rid of it. Alright, so here I use that selecting box that I talked about earlier. Just correcting this, lining it up with the waypoint path. And now I'm going to switch out these trees. So this is your map. You can do whatever you want with it. If you're following along exactly with this map, you don't have to get so detail oriented, but like any good map, if you take the time and you really get into some of the details and stuff, it'll be a really good map instead of just a simple map. And the only concern or things that I would say is just try to make sure that your map is balanced as best as it can, and also that there are some aesthetic elements to it so it looks like it could be a realistic war zone to some degree. Don't get carried away with all the details, otherwise you're going to spend hours on every single map on small minute things that you won't even be paying attention to when you're playing. So here's just the map settings that I have. You can change it to snow, you can do all that stuff, and of course you can do that in ionize and change those. Here's global options. I'm going to make this more of a storm map, so I'm lowering the sun to give it that ominous look of maybe a thunderstorm. Alright, so that's pretty much the end of the tutorial. Right here is just me showing the delete of the tunnel and just quickly adding in a few edits for the train. So if you're going to add a train, this is completely optional. You're going to go down to Vehicle under Civilian, and then you're going to look for Train Engine. There are different types of trains. Some are slower than others. You can just play around with those, but I usually just use the simple Train Engine. Try to place it next to or preferably on whatever the train tracks you're going to be using for them. And then you're going to treat them basically the same as a car. You're just going to get out the waypoint pathway tool. You're going to start a point, and you're going to follow along the train tracks. The difference here is when you come around something like this, these corners, you want them to be as close together as possible so it has a smooth curve. You want the train to look natural and realistic, and that's what that does. If you do a minimum of 3 per corner, like turn or corner, you'll have a pretty good train. But if you have like 1 to 2 in each curve, it's not going to look that graceful. Once you get past the map border, just like a car, you can just drag and drop anywhere just to get that train back. Here I'm just utilizing the outside of the map border to get the train to come back. I'm trying to make the turns not too sharp. I don't want the turns to be really sharp and have the train just get kind of wonky. So here I am just connecting it back, and then I just labeled this as train path. You don't really have to do any of that, but that's just for me to be able to quickly identify what waypoint paths are which. Now if you wanted it to stop, you're going to do different things there. There's a whole nother video I'm going to do on trains, just kind of going over how you would manipulate the train path labels. It would be something like Railroad 1 tunnel, Railroad 1 stop, or something like that, to kind of make those stay at the same height or to have a stopping distance. So that's pretty much this map. That kind of goes over everything. When I went to play here, I had already added in a few boats just for aesthetics. So you can see the mission briefing, you can see the tutorial. There's that boat I was just talking about. All I did was add a boat and then a waypoint path, just like you would for cars. And that's pretty much it. You can see the rain, you can see the thunder. All that's in the scripting and the rain and thunder folders. You can get those off of CNCLABS online or through a download link that I will provide for this video. I'm also going to be uploading the map to this video, so if you wanted to download the map and see firsthand kind of all the different changes I made since the last tutorial video, you can do that. If you wanted to play the map, you can also do that, of course. And then as I wrote in here, feel free to redistribute scripts with proper credit. That's something that's really big in the community of map making. Make sure that if you ever do use somebody else's INI codes or some kind of something like that, a map, that you just give them the proper credit. It is important. People spend a lot of hours crafting a really good map, and even the missions too. It just goes a long way there. So that's pretty much it. It just showcased that it's a fully functional map, and it's kind of what I was looking for. I hope these really helped you. If you thought that this was a really good tutorial videos, this one and the last one, you can go ahead and subscribe, turn on the notifications. I will be uploading some mini videos just going over some of the individual Worldbuilder tools and how to use them. So if you're interested in that, just keep your eyes on the lookout as well. And that pretty much sums up the rest of these videos for the tutorial on Worldbuilder. I will be releasing some new ones soon, but keep posted, and I hope this helped. Thanks.